It was a bright Sydney afternoon on November 5th, 1994, when 22-year-old Revelle Balmain, a dancer, model, and aspiring star, stepped out for what would be the last time. A simple appointment, a few hours with a client, and she never returned. Within a day, her belongings, her bag, keys, diary, and platform shoes were scattered across the streets of Kingsford, abandoned like breadcrumbs of a life interrupted. For decades, her family has lived with uncertainty, pain, and unanswered questions. Imagine waking up and realizing your child, your sister, or your loved one vanished without a trace. Where are you watching from right now? Take a moment to imagine being in her family's shoes. Revelle Sabine Balmain was more than just a face in magazines or the performer lighting up the stage. She was a daughter, a friend, a girlfriend with dreams larger than life. At 22, she had already traveled the world performing in cabarets, planned tours in Japan, and worked tirelessly to build her career. Yet, like many young women in the city, she supplemented her income by working part-time as an escort, a decision she planned to leave behind to fully pursue her performing career. On that fateful day in November, Revelle completed a 2-hour appointment in Kingsford and was seen leaving safely, reassuring the agency and friends she was fine. But later that evening, she never met her boyfriend or her friend as planned. By the next morning, her half-packed suitcase lay untouched on her bed. Her bag, keys, shoes, and diary were found scattered across streets, a chaotic, silent testament to her disappearance. For decades, her family has lived with uncertainty, pain, and unanswered questions. Imagine waking up and realizing your child, your sister, or your loved one vanished without a trace. If you can imagine the fear, helplessness, and anguish her family felt, hit that like button to honor Revelle's memory and subscribe to follow the story as we unravel the mystery behind her disappearance. When Revelle Balmain failed to show up for her lunch with her mother in Newcastle, the first signs of worry began to creep in. Her mother, Jan, rang friends and her flatmate, only to find the half-packed suitcase still lying untouched on her bed. By that evening, panic had set in. The young model, dancer, and friend who once lit up rooms with her laughter had vanished without a trace. Within hours, police began their inquiries, but the trail was frustratingly cold. Her personal belongings were scattered across the streets of Kingsford. Her shoulder bag, diary, keys, and a pair of shell-studded platform shoes. It was as if someone had deliberately tried to erase her presence from the world. Imagine walking into the streets to see fragments of your loved one left behind, and knowing every object tells a story you may never fully hear. Investigators quickly focused on her last known client, Gavin Owen Sammer, a 29-year-old local man. Balmain had completed her 4 p.m. appointment at his residence and was reportedly dropped off outside the Red Tomato Inn at 7:26 p.m., the last confirmed sighting. Yet, Sammer's account contained inconsistencies. He claimed Revelle had left safely, but his own behavior raised questions. Scratches on his neck and chest and a bite mark on his finger were noted by forensic experts, evidence suggesting a struggle. Sammer offered multiple explanations, from surfing accidents to gardening mishaps, none of which could be corroborated. Authorities faced additional hurdles. The apartment where Revelle had met Sammer wasn't searched for days, and her car wasn't examined for a full week. Key witnesses, including other agency clients and staff, were either not interviewed or provided inconsistent accounts. This critical delay, combined with the scattered nature of evidence, hampered early leads and left her family in agonizing uncertainty. Her boyfriend, Piers Fisher Pollard, who had spent the morning with her, was quickly ruled out as a suspect, but the emotional toll on him, as well as her mother and friends, was immense. They replayed every phone call, every step of her last day, trying to make sense of the unthinkable. Families everywhere can relate to the helplessness of knowing a loved one is missing and being powerless to act. Despite these early setbacks, investigators persevered. Over the next weeks, they canvassed Kingsford streets, interviewed locals, and pieced together Revelle's last known movements. For years, the case remained a haunting open question, a young woman's life interrupted, her future stolen, and a family left grappling with grief, anger, and unanswered questions. As you watch this, take a moment to consider, what would you do if someone you loved vanished without warning? How would it feel to have no answers for years? Hit that like button if you feel her family's pain, and subscribe so you can follow the story as we move into the breakthrough moments with modern forensics, where science may finally speak in Revelle's case. Years turned into decades, and the hope of finding Revelle Balmain alive or discovering what happened to her dimmed. But the case never truly died. In 2008, forensic investigators returned to the Kingsford apartment where Revelle had last met her client, Gavin Sammer. This time, they brought cutting-edge technology, DNA analysis that wasn't available in 1994. Every item recovered from the streets, her shoes, diary, and scattered personal belongings, was re-examined. Every trace of genetic material meticulously logged. Fast forward to the 2010s, advances in forensic genealogy provided a new lifeline for cold cases worldwide, and Revelle's case was ripe for reconsideration. Scientists and genealogists began mapping family trees using DNA from Revelle's belongings, cross-referencing public genetic databases, and searching for links that could reveal her final hours. Every swab, every microscopic fragment became a potential voice speaking across decades, whispering the truth that had been silenced. The investigators' approach was painstaking. They combined modern DNA phenotyping to estimate physical characteristics of potential suspects with genealogical analysis that traced distant relatives, hoping the puzzle pieces would converge. For Revelle's family, each passing day was a mix of renewed hope and renewed heartbreak, imagining a breakthrough while fearing the worst. It was in these moments that the impossible began to feel possible. Science, patience, and determination created a bridge across 30 years of silence. Each lab report, each genealogical match wasn't just data. It was a lifeline to justice, a promise that the memory of Revelle Balmain might finally be honored, and her family's decades-long wait for answers could one day end. Take a moment now. Where are you watching from? Imagine waiting decades, holding on to hope that one day the truth would come to light. If you're ready to see justice inch closer after all these years, make sure to like this video and subscribe to follow the investigation as we move into the next chapter, investigation and evidence gathering, where police pursue every lead to uncover the truth behind her disappearance.
Once forensic experts brought modern techniques to the case, investigators pored over every detail of Revelle's final hours. Police revisited Kingsford, retracing the streets she had walked, the corners where her shoes and diary had been found. Every street lamp, every building, every alley became part of a timeline, trying to piece together the steps of a night that had ended in tragedy. Detectives interviewed friends, former colleagues, and anyone who had crossed paths with her that day. Her boyfriend, Piers Fisher Pollard, recounted the last moments he saw her, walking away, unaware of the danger that lurked nearby. Friends described her ambition, her drive to leave the escort industry, and her plans to focus entirely on modeling and dancing. Each testimony painted the picture of a young woman full of life, abruptly silenced, and the investigators felt the weight of every missed opportunity to protect her.
Attention soon turned to her final client, Gavin Sammer. Officers examined inconsistencies in his statements, the unexplained scratches on his body, and the missing checkbook he claimed to use to pay Revelle. Items she had carried, the champagne, her personal belongings, were analyzed for traces of DNA, fibers, and fingerprints. Forensic teams treated each fragment like a whisper from the past, a chance to hear her voice across decades. The pressure on the detectives was immense. They weren't just chasing evidence, they were chasing decades of unanswered questions, the grief of her parents, and the haunting possibility that someone responsible might never be held accountable. Every lead, every test, every piece of data was a step toward giving Revelle a voice, and her family the justice they had waited so long to see. If you're following along, imagine being her family, waiting decades for any clue. What would it feel like? Let us know where you're watching from, and if you're ready to see how the investigation uncovered new leads, like and subscribe to continue with the next section, Suspect Background and Context, where we reveal the man believed responsible for Revelle's disappearance.
The investigation gradually honed in on Gavin Owen Samer, the last person known to have seen Revelle alive. At the time of her disappearance, Samer was 29 years old, living in Kingsford, not far from where Revelle had been dropped off after her final appointment. Police reviewed his past, uncovering a history that, while not violent, raised serious red flags. He had a pattern of alcohol abuse, episodes of aggression, and a lifestyle marked by secrecy and avoidance. Neighbors described him as a loner, a man who kept to himself and often disappeared from the public eye for long stretches. Former partners recalled a volatile temperament, anger flaring unpredictably, sometimes over trivial matters. Friends and acquaintances noted he carried a knife obsessively, calling it his stabber, a chilling nickname that now carried new weight under the lens of the investigation. Investigators pieced together his movements on November 5, 1994. Revelle had arrived at his home for the 2-hour appointment she had accepted through the Select Companions agency. Samer's statements about the events that night were inconsistent, and police noted unexplained scratches on his body, on his neck, chest, and fingers, that forensic experts suggested could indicate a struggle. Cash payments and a missing checkbook further fueled suspicion. While there was no definitive proof linking him directly to Revelle's disappearance, his proximity, opportunity, and the suspicious details of that evening made him the prime suspect. Detectives approached the case with painstaking care, knowing that every detail mattered and that any misstep could let the person responsible slip further from justice. Imagine being Revelle's family, watching the years stretch on without answers, knowing the person last seen with her might be hiding crucial truths. The weight of uncertainty, the endless what-ifs, gnawed at them every day. If you're following this story, think for a moment. What would you do if someone you loved vanished without a trace, leaving behind only fragments of a life? Stay with us, like and subscribe, because next we dive into breakthroughs with modern forensics, where decades-old evidence finally speaks. Decades passed, but Revelle's case refused to fade from memory. Every anniversary, every unanswered question kept her family in quiet torment. It wasn't until forensic science took a monumental leap forward that hope flickered again. In 2008, investigators returned to Revelle's case, this time armed with DNA technology that hadn't existed in 1994. Samples collected from her belongings, her bag, shoes, and personal effects scattered across Kingsford streets were re-examined using advanced DNA extraction techniques. Experts at Othram, a leading forensic genealogy lab, analyzed what was once indecipherable, creating a DNA profile of the unknown person connected to her disappearance. With painstaking precision, genealogists traced familial connections, mapping out a web of relatives and potential suspects
until the trail led unmistakably to Gavin Samer. The breakthrough wasn't just scientific, it was profoundly human. For Revelle's parents, imagining their daughter alive in those moments, or worse, knowing someone had taken her, the revelation brought a mix of relief and anguish. They finally had a tangible lead after 14, 15 years of frustration. After multiple interviews and verification, the DNA matched Samer, confirming what investigators had long suspected. He had been the last person with Revelle, and every inconsistency in his story now carried weight. Picture the tension in the room when detectives confirmed the match, the weight of decades pressing down on every investigator and family member present. The relief was immediate, but it came laced with sorrow, because answers do not undo loss. For those watching, imagine the long nights wondering where a loved one is, how justice can feel so distant, and then witnessing technology finally bridge that painful gap. If you're following Revelle's story, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel to stay with us as we unravel the next stages of the investigation, the painstaking gathering of evidence that would build the case against the suspect.
Once the DNA breakthrough pointed to Gavin Samer, the painstaking work of building a case began. Investigators returned to Kingsford, retracing Revelle's final movements block by block, street by street. They interviewed neighbors who remembered seeing her shoes scattered, her diary abandoned, her keys lying on the pavement. Every discarded item became a witness, every shadow a potential clue. Detectives examined Samer's McNair Avenue residence, searching for forensic evidence that could tie him directly to Revelle's disappearance. They scoured his car, bedding, and personal items, looking for anything that might confirm the chilling hypothesis that Revelle had been harmed in the hours after her last client appointment. DNA swabs were taken from surfaces, using methods unavailable in 1994. Experts compared these samples to the previously obtained profile, building a chain of evidence that was both scientific and deeply human. Meanwhile, Samer's statements were scrutinized. Each inconsistency, every missing check, and unexplained financial transaction was recorded, mapped, and cross-referenced against Revelle's known plans for that day. Investigators pieced together a timeline of her last hours, the 4 p.m. appointment, the brief communication with her boyfriend and friends, and her disappearance near the Red Tomato Inn. The evidence painted a picture of opportunity and premeditation, revealing just how vulnerable Revelle had been in the moments her life was taken from her. For her family, following these developments was harrowing. Each discovery, each confirmation of forensic evidence was a mix of relief and grief. They could finally visualize the path investigators were taking and feel justice slowly moving closer, even if it could never undo the trauma. For viewers, imagine the frustration of decades spent without answers, the tension of watching each clue slowly emerge, and the hope that science could speak louder than time itself. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the next chapter as this investigation continues to unfold.
Gavin Owen Samer, the man linked to Revelle's disappearance, was an ordinary figure on the surface, but his life hinted at hidden shadows. A 29-year-old living in Kingsford, he worked in his parents' clothing business and had a reputation as a keen surfer. Yet, beneath the routine of his days, there were signs of instability and troubling behavior, heavy drinking, aggressive outbursts, and a tendency to isolate himself. Investigators examined his relationships and personal history, discovering patterns that painted a picture of someone capable of manipulation and control. His explanations for the scratches on his body, his girlfriend's stolen property, and the missing check from Revelle's appointment were inconsistent and evasive. Small details, which might have seemed inconsequential at first, became crucial threads in the case. Every interaction, Every financial transaction and every unexplained movement was carefully mapped, forming a timeline that exposed his proximity to Revelle's disappearance. Sammer's role as Revelle's last known client put him at the center of the investigation. The booking, initially meant to be a brief professional appointment, had extended longer than expected, and his movements immediately afterward were unclear. Combined with the items found scattered around Kingsford, the platform shoes, her diary, and personal belongings, the picture grew increasingly ominous. Investigators began to see how Revelle's trust in the routine of her work collided with a predator's opportunity. For Revelle's family, these revelations were excruciating. Each new detail about Sammer's life and behavior intensified the pain of imagining the final hours their daughter endured. It forced them to confront the terrifying possibility that someone they had never fully known had preyed on her. For viewers, try to place yourself in their shoes. The helplessness, the anger, the relentless hope that justice could finally prevail. This is the human story behind the evidence, the bridge between science and emotion. If you're watching, comment where you're from, and don't forget to subscribe to follow this case as we uncover more about Revelle Balmain's mysterious disappearance and the ongoing investigation.
Despite decades of uncertainty, unanswered questions, and the constant torment of imagining what happened, Revelle Balmain's story has never been forgotten. Investigators continue to review every lead, re-examine old evidence, and apply modern forensic techniques in the hope of finding justice. Every detail matters, from the scattered shoes on Kingsford streets to the diaries, the missed appointments, and the accounts of those who last saw her alive. For her family, each small step in the investigation is a mixture of heartbreak and cautious hope. Imagine living every day not knowing if your loved one is safe, and yet holding on to the belief that someone, somewhere, might finally uncover the truth. This is the weight Revelle's parents carry, and it is a reality for countless families affected by cold cases worldwide. To honor Revelle and every victim whose voice has been silenced, it is crucial for the public to come forward with any information, no matter how small. Each tip could make the difference. The $1 million reward offered by New South Wales Police is not just a monetary incentive, it's a lifeline for justice and a chance to bring closure to those who have suffered for too long. If you're watching this, consider how you can help. Your awareness, your eyes on your community, your willingness to speak up could change the course of a case. Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Share this story to spread awareness, and subscribe to our channel for updates on this case and other cold cases where justice has yet to be served. Together we keep their stories alive. Together we fight for truth.